Good morning, everyone, and to those of you on the East Coast, good afternoon. My name is Leah Weston from DSD Business Systems, and I want to thank you all for attending today's webinar, A Guide to Cash Management. Before we get started, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about DSD Business Systems. Our company provides accounting, ERP, and business management solutions for your business. With over 30 offices nationwide, DSD Business Systems serves customers across the globe. We've been a partner since 1989 and have developed over 400 enhancements. Please feel free to contact us if you'd like further information on any of our Stage 100 enhancements or custom programming. Our speaker today for A Guide to Cash Management is Jon Reiter. He's our Chief Software Engineer for DSD Business Systems. Jon has been at DSD for over 24 years. He'll be showing us the exciting new features in our latest Stage 100 enhancement, Cash Management. Throughout the presentation, please type in any questions you might have, and we'll have a brief Q&A following the presentation. So with that, I'd like to pass it off to Jon to begin.
Thank you, Leah. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. As Leah mentioned, my name is Jon Reiter. I am the Chief Software Engineer at DSD Business Systems. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. I know how busy your schedules are, and I appreciate your time today. I'm really excited to show our newest product. It's the Cash Management for Stage 100. Today's agenda, I'm going to briefly discuss what cash management and forecasting is. I'll discuss some of the features that are in the product. I'll then talk about the pricing that we have available, including our beta program and what versions we'll have available for Stage 100. After the slides, I will be giving a product demonstration. That demonstration will run approximately 25 minutes, and we'll have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. So cash management, I should start by saying it's a new module. It's a module that looks like any other Stage 100 module, and it's designed for doing cash flow analysis and forecasting. We began creating this product about a year ago. We showcased the Sage Summit conference, and we completed development late last year, and we've released it for all the versions, and we have the beta program that I'll talk about a little bit later. The product does a number of things. The first thing it does is it does performance reviews for your customers and vendors. So in Sage 100, there are some capabilities that handle telling you what the performance is for your customers, such as the average days to pay, and you have your terms code. What we've done here with cash management is we've given you some tools to better review the performance of your customers and vendors. And that performance review will lend itself to your cash flow modeling. One of the major components of doing forecasting is knowing, when money is coming in and going out. So knowing how well your customers and you're performing with your vendors will assist in doing that analysis. We also have cash flow models. So you can create unlimited models. It could be short-term, mid-term, or long-term models that consist of various cash streams that can then be exploded into a projected cash flow and analysis. So you can do various what-if scenarios for short-term and mid-term and long-term forecasting and perform what-if analysis. The product, as I mentioned, is a module. It does integrate with the distribution modules as well as payroll. It has interaction with within these modules, but for the most part, it is a standalone module. Let me briefly discuss how we do the cash flow forecasting. So you can set up unlimited cash streams, and these cash streams can be any type of inflow or outflow of cash in your organization. So that can include open invoices, sales orders, purchase orders, repetitive invoices, repeating orders. It could be miscellaneous inflow or outflow, such as payroll or other expenses. And again, you can create unlimited streams, which then you can fit into a cash flow model. So many companies are typically already creating cash flow models on a spreadsheet. So just picture, each row in the spreadsheet will be a different cash stream, such as open invoices and sales orders. And then from those cash flow models, you can then perform an analysis. So I'm going to touch on each component of the forecasting in my demonstration. Some of the additional features that we have in this module, I'm pretty excited about these features, one of which is the cash receipts history inquiry. This is a feature that I feel is missing in Sage 100. On the AP side in Sage 100, you already have the ability to do invoice history inquiry and payment history inquiry, but on the accounts receivable side, you can only do invoice history inquiry. So what we've done is we've created a cash receipts history inquiry that looks a lot like cash receipts entry. So you can view deposit, checks, credit cards, and invoice payment information from one place. We also have a new check inquiry. It's kind of a one-stop shop for the checks. So it could be AP checks, AR checks that you've received from your customers, as well as payroll checks. Next up, we have the bank rec history inquiry and report. You probably know by now that when you're doing bank reconciliation, once you've reconciled your bank, they basically purge all of the checks and deposits. So once you've done that, you cannot get that information back. So what we've done is we've created bank reconciliation history. So as you purge those transactions, they're kept in history, and we have a new history inquiry as well as a report that you can access to get to that information. We have various reports in this module. You can do a point-in-time bank reconciliation report, which utilizes that bank reconciliation history. You can do cash flow analysis reports, space testing, action item that will tell you what changes you've made to your forecasting. And we have historical reports for the customers and vendors' performance reviews. All right, we do have this module available for versions 4.40 and above. We have pricing set up. The suggested list price is $5,800. We do have a beta program that we're starting where we're offering a major discount. So you can get the product for $4,000, and you have a 60-day beta period. The terms of the beta test sites, the user must purchase the product first, and you get that at the beta price. The user has 60 days to return the product for a full refund. The user install, configure, and test the software over that 60-day period and report back to DSD any defects or issues with the product. All communications will be through enhancements at dsdinc.com. And finally, at the end of the 60-day beta period, the user must complete a cash management forecasting beta survey that we will provide, and in exchange for that, the product will be $4,000. So if you have any questions regarding a beta program, you can email me directly, or you can also email enhancements at dsdinc.com. All right, so let's get started with the product demonstration. Okay, as I mentioned, cash management and forecasting is a new module. So we have a main menu that consists of the programs to do the cash flow forecasting as well as the performance reviews. We have an inquiries menu that has all of the inquiries available, some of which are Sage's inquiries and some of which are the new ones that we've added with the module. We have a reports menu. We have various reports such as the performance review reports and the cash flow forecasting reports. And then we have setup and utilities. Let me start with the main menu, which is the performance reviews. As I mentioned in my PowerPoints, Sage 100 already has some capabilities to allow you to forecast when customers pay. And that is really the terms code and the average days to pay. So on the screen, I'm going to go ahead and pull up one of our customers here. And at the top part of the screen, it shows you those Sage 100 settings that come out of the box, such as what the payment terms are and what the average days to pay and the last payment date. Now, although this information is helpful, it's keeping track of the average days to pay over time. But what you may want to do is to do a performance review looking at more recent history for that customer. For example, maybe over time the average days to pay, in this case it's 8 days, but over the last 6 months or the last number of invoices, it could be longer than that. So being able to do that forecasting of when the customer pays is going to assist when we do our cash flow modeling. On the middle of the screen, you can set what your performance review settings are. And I should mention, you can run this review of the customer as often as you'd like. You can select it here by doing this review button, and there's a few other places in this module where you can do customer performance review. But here's where you define what those review settings are. So you can set the review to be based on a date range or the last number of invoices. Once you perform that review, those results are listed at the bottom of the screen. So it shows the last criteria you used to do that review. In this case, I'm looking at the number of invoices. It shows the date of the last performance review. It shows the number of late invoices, the average lateness of the customer based on that review, a percentage of late payments, and finally at the bottom, which is the important one, which is the average days to pay based on the review. So as I mentioned, you can run this review over and over again, and every time you run the review, we keep track in history of when you've done the review and what the settings were when you did the review and what the results were. So you could run a report or an inquiry to see how their performance has changed over time. So you can see here, I ran this earlier today, and at the bottom it shows, based on my review, that the customer is now averaging 15 days to pay. I can change, the number of invoices I'm looking at here. Maybe I can change it to the last 5. I can run the review again, and you can see it in the last 5 invoices, they've averaged 2 days to pay. So you can see that they're getting better over time. So that's the customer performance review. Again, you can do the settings for each customer. You can review the customer from here, but there are other places where you can run the performance review. On our utilities menu, we have a program that you can run for all customers and all vendors, so you can do them all at once. The other place is your forecasting. At the time you run your forecast, you can also do the customer and vendor performance review from there. So the customer review, performance review is important, but just as important is the vendor performance review. Now, you may say, well, my company's in charge of paying the vendors, so why should I, do a performance review on that? Well, doing a performance review on your vendors is just as important because that shows you the average days that you're paying your vendors, and sometimes you may not be in complete control over your AP department. So, so doing this performance review is kind of, you're grading yourself on how you're paying your vendors. So you have the same capability here that you have in that customer performance review. How this information affects your forecasting in just a moment. But let me talk about creating the cash flow models. In my PowerPoint slide, I mentioned that there are kind of three components to that. The first one is cash streams. So we have a cash stream maintenance here, and this is where you can create your cash streams that you then put into the cash flow model, and then from the model you do your analysis. Okay, so a cash flow model can be any inflow or outflow of cash in an organization. So I've set up a number of cash streams here myself. You can see I've created some open invoice cash streams. I have a beginning balance cash stream. I have sales orders and payroll and purchase orders. I also have rental income. And all of these cash streams, you can create unlimited, but you can also create various versions of the same cash stream. So, for example, I'll have one cash stream that is for all open invoices here. And then I can create other cash streams that are like it, but it's specific to the division. Obviously, I wouldn't put all of these on the same cash flow model. I might have one model that shows all open invoices in accounts payable, and then I'll have another cash that breaks it down by division. So I'm going to go ahead and select one of these cash streams here, which is the AP open invoices. I can run some test explosions to see, well, okay, so how does this information look if I were to put this on a cash flow model? So I can put a start date, I can put intervals and the number of intervals that I'm going to look at. If I click on test explosion, then what you'll see here is it's taken that start date and it looks at the default interval of weekly. So it basically does a column for each week starting on January 1st. And you can see here that there are some numbers, and these are AP open invoices, right? So I can select that, I can drill down on it to see what open invoices are making up that number. So here you can see this invoice, it shows that invoice date, it shows the average days to pay based on my vendor performance review, and then it can show my estimated payment date, okay? And that estimated payment date is crucial. That tells me, when that cash outflow will occur. So for each cash stream, you can do, you can basically test it to see what it would look like when you do your forecasting. Each cash stream has its own additional panel. So here for open invoices, you can select, your vendor range and what level of detail that you want to see when you do your forecasting. Another stream is a beginning balance, right? So this beginning balance will come from your banks, right? So you can choose maybe all banks, or maybe you want to choose just specific banks that make up that cash stream. So I could create two cash streams here, one for bank code A, another for bank code B, and provide those on my forecasting. Okay. We have some other stream types that are not necessarily inflow or outflow, but you could do subtotals, you can do totals, and you can do a cash balance, which is like a running total. So all of these items, these cash streams, you can then insert into the cash. I should also point out that each cash stream is made up of the stream type. So if you look at the stream types, these are all the different inflow and outflow items that are available to you. So again, you have open invoices, repetitive invoices, you have data entry in progress, you have sales orders, POs, repeating sales orders and purchase orders, and then you have miscellaneous cash inflow and outflow. Okay. And as mentioned at the bottom here, we have subtotals, totals, and then the cash balance. Okay. So that covers the cash streams. Now, what do we do with these cash streams once we've defined them? Well, we create a cash flow model. Okay. So let's take a look at that. So I've created a couple of cash flow models. I have a weekly one and a monthly one. You can define that modeling interval. So this one I've set to weekly, but we have a number of options here. We can create a daily or every 2 days, every 3 days, which is bi-weekly, monthly. I find that when you're doing forecasting, the sweet spot is weekly. If you try to do forecasting on a year-to-year basis, it's not as easy to do that forecasting when it's that far out. So I find that creating maybe a daily forecast, which shows you're forecasting each day for a week, or maybe each week for the next month or two, that's kind of the sweet spot. So I have a start date of when I'm going to do my analysis, and then I have the number of intervals. So in this case, I'm setting it to 8 weeks. Okay. I can also do that performance review while I do my forecasting. So if I check this box, when I do my forecasting, it'll first run for all of my customers and vendors and update it, based on the individual settings of each customer and vendor, and then it does the forecasting after that. Once you define your information on the model, then you plug in the streams onto the lines. For those of you that are familiar with doing forecasting on a spreadsheet, this is kind of similar to that, where you're creating column 1 in the spreadsheet, which consists of all of the components or the cash streams, and then each column in the spreadsheet is the interval, right? So here I've created this cash flow model. I've started with a beginning cash balance from my bank. Then I'm going to show my open invoices, AP and accounts receivable for Division 1. Then I'm going to show a subtotal. Then I'm going to show the same open invoice information, but this time for Division 2, and then another subtotal. Then I'm going to have my sales orders, my repeating sales orders, my purchase orders, my repeating orders, and so on. And then miscellaneous inflow or outflow, such as payroll and rental. Okay. So again, you can create unlimited cash flow models that consist of unlimited cash streams. Okay. So again, you can create different models based on different intervals, and the goal is to find that cash flow model that works best for you. So I envision a lot of customers that will have they'll have different cash flow models, but they'll finally pick the one that works best for them, maybe on a weekly basis or on a daily basis. Okay. So once you've created those cash flow models, to do your forecast. Okay. So next on the main menu, we have our cash flow analysis. So this is the fun part. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new analysis. I can give it a name, and here's where I select that cash flow model that I created. So I'm going to go ahead and select the weekly model. Okay. And then I can, from here, I can set, what my modeling interval is and what my start date is. I can also change the number of intervals that I am doing my analysis for. Okay. Now when I select the Streams tab, what it's done is it's looked at that information on the header tab and created what looks like a spreadsheet. It has my cash streams, it shows the stream type, and then it's created columns based on my number of intervals and my start date. So again, this one is a weekly cash flow analysis starting on March 29th, which is today. Now you'll see that there's really nothing here. All the numbers are 0, and that's because we haven't exploded it yet. So on the top left, there's this little button that looks like a firecracker. So when you select it, what it's doing is it's scanning your Sage 100 system for all of the information, and it's combining it into this cash flow analysis. So you can see that it created the beginning balance, which is for my banks. And then each week, it pulls the information in the open invoices, the sales orders, purchase orders, and combines them to show me what the numbers are. At the bottom, we have a total cash flow, and then we have a cash balance, which is the running total. So this is the important part of the analysis, is looking at, how my cash flow changes, week to week or day. Now, what's cool here is I can do a number of things. I can drill down, just like I showed you in the test explosion, I can drill down on any of these by selecting the cell and then drilling down on it. So that $6,000 payments for AP open invoices is comprised of these 2 invoices, right? It shows the invoice date, the estimated pay date, which is based on the average days to pay, and it shows the dollar amount. Now, in addition to showing me what's what makes up that summary cell, I can also make changes here. So maybe based on my cash flow, I may need to move some stuff around. So I want to, in this case, I want to move one of these invoices to be paid at a later date. So right now it's planned to be March 3rd. I'm going to move that back a few weeks and change it to April 16th. I can also change the amount if I want, or I can check this box to exclude it altogether from my analysis. So once I click OK, it's actually making a change. So it went from $6,000 payment to $1,000, and it moved that $5,000 payment 2 weeks out. So with this capability, I can move things around. I can change when I'm paying certain things, such as AP checks, or maybe doing some other investments. Of course, I don't really want to mess with payroll because that's probably the most important thing I'm paying attention to. But I can change other things that are incoming as well. So maybe if I know a certain customer has called me and they're going to pay late, I can pull up the invoice and I can change the payment date. And by the way, you can see here it's looking at the average days to pay for this customer. And again, that average days to pay is based on that customer performance review. Okay. So I really love how this screen looks. I can right-click and I can also send this entire sheet to Excel. And then there's some other things that I can do in terms of reporting. So I'm going to go ahead and save this cash flow analysis. And on the reports menu, I have a number of reports that I can run based on that analysis. So I can do kind of just a summary report. I can choose my analysis that I did. And so this is kind of showing me, I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger here. So this is showing me the end result. So based on the changes that I've made, so again, you can show you can see here that the change I made to that AP payment is shown here. So this is the summary information. So I can kind of print this out and use this for my forecasting. And another report I have is the action report. And what this is it's showing me what I changed. Okay, so where the summary report shows me the end result, this report showed me what I changed to get that end result. Okay, so you can see here that invoice, I changed the pay date from March 30th over to April 16th. Now, this action report it can be used in various ways. So maybe I'm making some changes to my accounts payable, and then I'm going to run this report and then give this to my AP clerk to let them know that they need to change when they're paying a vendor or some vendors. Okay. So that's it for the forecasting part. Let me talk about some of the other features that we have in our product. And so let's look at the inquiries menu. As I mentioned, this is a menu where we have a number of existing Sage inquiries. We kind of wanted to have this menu have all of the inquiries that were related to either invoices or payments. So we have AP, AR, and payment history inquiry, which are the standard Sage inquiries. And then we've added a few more. So the first one we've added is the cash receipts history inquiry. And I actually love this. This is something that I think should be in Sage 100. I'm sure many of you feel the same. So what you can do is you can select, the history, and it shows on the top part, it shows the deposit. And again, this looks a lot like cash receipts entry, right? And then in the middle part, it shows the checks or the credit cards that make up that deposit. And then you can select each check, and it'll show the invoices. Again, so this is 3 parts to the inquiry, which looks just like the 3 parts that you see in cash receipts entry. Okay. So that's it for the cash receipts history inquiry. Another inquiry that we created was that bank reconciliation transaction history inquiry. As I mentioned, in standard Sage 100, when you complete your reconciliation, you can purge all of the transactions related to that reconciliation, and that can include, your bank rec check history as well as your deposit history. And we've changed that. So rather than that information disappearing, it's now written to a file. And then you can use this inquiry screen to look at, for each bank, all of those purged checks. So it shows pretty much the same information that you see, in the check and deposit adjustment entry in bank rec. But we also have a couple extra columns here. One is the purge date, as well as the purge user code. So you can see when it was purged out of bank rec. So you can see checks as well as deposits here. Now, the other cool thing we have is that if I want, I can restore this back into bank rec. So on the top right, I have a restore button. And so let's say I've completed my reconciliation, I've deleted my transactions, and then I realize, whoops, I made a mistake. My bank rec wasn't correct. And now I can take all of that history that I did during the purge, and I can restore it back into bank reconciliation and then redo and then purge again. So I actually really love this feature. A lot of the users I've shown this to, they love it as well. Next up, we have Cheque Inquiry. This is something I came up with. It's kind of a one-stop shop for anything that's related to a check. So a lot of times you need, you know the check number and you need to go find information about it. And sometimes it's not that easy to go find. So here we have 3 panels one for accounts payable, one for receivables, and one for payroll. And this is showing all of the history related to checks and sorted by checks. I can go here and look at AP. I can sort by any of these columns. I can highlight a transaction. I can then, from here, I can drill down in external for that transaction, and I can also drill up to payment history inquiry. We have the same thing for accounts receivable, where you can drill down as well as drill up into the new cash receipts history inquiry. And then we have payroll. And then we have the capability of searching for checks based on certain criteria. All right, next up we have the history inquiries for the performance review. So as I mentioned, each time you run a performance review for either a customer or a vendor, we save into history that performance review. So I can go look at, a specific customer. I can see each review date, and I can see the performance over time. So for this customer, I did a review on January 1st, and it showed the average days to pay as 2 days. And then I can look at each time and see how it changes. I also have a report that you can run that shows the history of the customer and vendor performance reviews as well. Okay. So that covers the demonstration today of cash flow management and forecasting. Leah, let's take some questions.
Great. Thank you, Jon. Let's open it up to questions. Feel free to type them in, and we'll be sure to answer them. Okay, our first question for you, Jon, is can you save the report so you can compare the projection to actual?
Ooh, that's a good question. So the reports, we don't have any save capability. You can set up an action report that shows how you made changes to the forecasting. So you can run, for example, you can run that summary report on the forecast that you did, and then you can make changes to it and then print that report again. We're not saving a history of the cash flow. That's something that we could probably think about, but there is a way to kind of gauge how you've made changes to it, but we don't have a history of every forecast.
Thank you, Jon. The next question we get is a quite common one. We will have a recording of this webinar available for you after. It will be emailed to you, and then we will also have a copy of the webinar on our DSD Business Systems YouTube channel for you to view as well. So the next question, Jon, is how does the model project purchase order transactions?
That's a good question. So let me go ahead and pull up my cash flow analysis that I just did here. As with open invoices, it's pretty straightforward because you can take the invoice date, which is a known factor. It's already been invoiced, so you know the invoice date, and then you look at average days to pay to come up with the payment date. With purchase orders, just 1 second here. Let me pull up the right one here. With purchase orders, you don't know what the invoice date is yet. So we had to come up with some way to know when that purchase order will be invoiced, and it's based on, let's see, I'm going to drill down on this. So here's a purchase order here, right? So it's based on the required date. So when you create a PO, you have your order date, you have your required date, and we're assuming that the estimated invoice date will be that required date. Now, when I showed you the open invoice and how you can change the payment date, the payment amount, or you could exclude it. With purchase orders and sales orders, you have the same thing, but you can also change the estimated invoice date. So when you change the estimated invoice date, it then will change the estimated payment date. So from here, you can adjust what those invoice dates are. The same for sales orders as well as the repeating orders and sales orders.
Great. Thank you. How will Sage's move to PR subscription affect the module?
It doesn't. First off, the the subscription is Sage 100C, right? And the programs between Sage 100 and Sage 100C are the same. It's just that behind the scenes, it handles the subscription. So, so anything that we have that's payroll related, any enhancement, you can still purchase from us whether you're on 100 or 100C. This specific enhancement, cash flow management and forecasting, although it does show those payroll checks on that check inquiry, we actually don't make any change to the payroll module itself. We only read from that check, that payroll check history. Therefore, any changes Sage makes to the payroll module will not affect this product.
Okay, thank you. John, I'm going to jump back to Michael's earlier question. How does the model project purchase order transactions? There was a follow-up question. Does the tool parse the payment terms associated with the purchase order?
So the information it uses to forecast purchase orders, as I mentioned, it's using the required date on the purchase order, and that's the estimated invoice date. And from there, it uses the average days to pay for that vendor to come up with what the estimated payment date is. Now, the average days to pay, that comes from the performance review. When you do a vendor performance review or a customer performance review, you have a number of options to use. And I'm going to go ahead and run back over here to the customer, and the vendor performance review is the same way. So in this performance review settings, again, you set this up for each customer and vendor. You can choose how you do your review. So in this case, I'm looking at the last X number of invoices, but I can also look at the performance review based on a date. So I can look at everything in the last 18 months. Or I can choose the terms. So I can set a terms code for that customer, and it's the same for the vendor. So let's say I set the terms code to be 30 days. Then the performance review will always use the terms code rather than doing a performance review and looking at the average days to pay or the last number of invoices. So you can't set the terms code on the vendor to be used when doing the estimated payment.
Okay. Is the cash forecast only based on the actuals in the system?
Yes, and actually it's a little bit of both. So there are some cash streams. Let's go back to cash stream maintenance, and let's talk about what the cash stream types are. Some of these stream types are based on actual information, right? For example, open invoices. Those invoices are already created, and then we come up with what the payment date is based on the average days to pay, or whatever setting you have, right? There are some other types that are not based on historical, but based on schedules that you create. As I mentioned, you can create miscellaneous cash inflow and outflow. these are those stream types here. So where do those come from? So let's talk about that for a second. On the setup menu, I have what's called cash inflow schedule and outflow schedule maintenance. Inflow obviously is money that's coming in, such as investments or other income. So here I have an inflow schedule called 2015 rental income, which it should be 2016 because that's the dates here. So what I'm doing is I'm setting up a schedule. You can do the same thing for an outflow, let's say for payroll, right? Where you can say on these dates, this amount of cash is either coming in or coming out. So this isn't really based on historical information. This is based on your own settings, right? And you might find that when you're creating long-term forecasting, maybe because you don't know what your open invoices are going to be a year from now, but what you do know is based on historical information, you know, I can set up a schedule that tells me, okay, so I know that this amount of cash is coming in on this month for this stream or this month for this stream. So I create the schedule here, and then I can assign this schedule to a cash stream, right? And then put that cash stream on the cash flow model. So this is an example of something that is not necessarily historical. It's something that's kind of user-defined.
Thank you, John. Can you restore only the history items you purged as selected or range?
So when we say restore, I think we're correct. Transaction history inquiry, right?
Yeah, Joyce, if you could expand on that, that would be helpful.
Sure. So this is the bank transaction history inquiry, and if I go to my bank reconciliation module, let's talk about how this works. So in cash deposit and adjustment entry, I'm going to pull up a bank, and here I have checks and then I have deposits. And when I'm doing my reconciliation, I can clear, you know, the checks and deposits. I'm looking at my bank statement and I'm clearing them. And then once I've completed this entry, I can then do my bank reconciliation report. When I'm done printing that report, Sage 100 prompts me to purge those transactions. And when you say yes, those transactions are removed from the bank rec check and deposit and adjustment entry, or the BR transaction file, and it's moved into the bank rec transaction history file. So from here, I can view that information, but I can also pick and choose which of these records I'm restoring back. So when I hit restore, it asks me, do I want to restore it back? You can see it's removed it from the screen here. And if I were to go back in the check deposit and adjustment entry, that record will be back in play. So that way I can redo my reconciliation and then when I'm done, repurge. So I hope that's enough detail on that. And of course, if there's any questions that any of you have or you need more detail, feel free to give me a call or send me an email.
So, John, an additional question from Joyce. Is there a field where we can post a payment we know we will be doing at end of month, like loan payments, when we receive the actual paperwork?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing we talked about with the cash inflow and outflow. So I can create a schedule, you know, called bank payment or whatever the payment is. That happens in the setup menu. So this would be cash outflow maintenance. So for example, here I've set up my payroll for the month of August, and I can assign that schedule to a cash stream. So you have the same capability there where you can create your estimates for your payments in a schedule, Again, you assign that schedule to the stream, and then you put that stream into the model. Now, when you do your forecasting, you do have the capability of moving that schedule around. So let me go ahead and go back real quick into my analysis that I just did for you. And I'm going to go, actually I already have it open. So here is a payroll, for example. So I can select from here that cash outflow, and I can change the date or exclude it, or change the amount of that cash outflow, just like I could with the other cash streams, how I can edit or move things around, right? So yeah, that's how you do it.
Thank you, Jon. We have one final question. If there are any additional questions that you have, please feel free to type them in, and we'll be sure to answer them. The question right now for you, Jon, is, are discounts accounted for when projecting AR cash inflows or AP cash outflows?
It is, yes. And that was a tricky part to program into the software, was how do we handle discounts? So yes, it does take into account the payment date and the discount amount.
Thank you. Are there any final questions for Jon to answer today? If so, please feel free to type them in. We'll hang on for a few more minutes and see if any other questions come in. Well, I think that's all of the questions we have for today. Thank you, Jon, again so much for that great presentation. And if you do have any further questions, we'll be sending out a thank you email, and please feel free to reply back and let us know if there's any additional things that we can help you with. And with that, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.